come in fairly quietly and we'll get things started because we're running a little late already. So, good evening everyone and welcome. Tonight's meeting is an important opportunity for council to hear directly from members of the public. Before we begin, I'd like to set out a few expectations to ensure our time together is respectful and productive. Please remember that this is a public forum. We ask that everyone speaks respectfully without use of foul language, swearing, or personal attacks. We know that the issues before us can be emotional and deeply felt. We ask that you share your views calmly and clearly so that they can be understood and properly recorded. Out of respect for all speakers, we ask that there be no loud applause, cheering, or destructive outbursts. While it's natural to feel strongly we need to maintain an environment where every voice can be heard without intimidation or distraction. Each speaker will be given 5 minutes to present their comments. We encourage you to bring forward new ideas or perspectives. If a point has already been raised, we may thank you for your contribution and move the discussion along so that others have a chance to be heard. Council's role this evening is to listen. We're here to hear your perspectives and ensure that they are part of the public record. Thank you for your cooperation. Together we can make sure that this meeting is respectful, constructive, and focused on the matters at hand. And now I'll open the meeting. Normally I have roll call, but typically I just say, everyone's here, council, saves us a bit of time, they'll call the meeting to order. And now I have an introduction to read. And I should let everybody know, if there's nobody in the audience, I don't have to read this introduction. I have never had that opportunity in any of these public meetings. The purpose of this continuation meeting is to hear the following application for the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment, OPA-08 and ZA 2023-02, Thomas Cavanaugh Construction Limited. The planning consultant will provide a brief overview of the file. The applicant will be given an opportunity to explain the need for the zoning bylaw amendment, and then any person or public body in opposition and then in favor to the application will be heard. If a specified person or public body does not make oral or written submissions at the public meeting, or does not make written submissions to the Township of Highland Commons before the bylaw is passed, the specified person or public body may not be added to a hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal, unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. Please be advised there are no third-party appeals to the OLT. If you wish to be notified of the decision of council in respect to any of the below-listed applications, you must submit a written request to the clerk, or you must sign the attendance list provided at tonight's meeting. This will also entitle you to be advised of a possible OLT hearing. The clerk must provide notice of council's decision to all of those who request it, a copy within 15 days after the day the bylaw is passed. Anyone who is eligible to appeal a decision to the tribunal may do so by filing with the clerk within 20 days of the notice of decision. An appeal to the tribunal may be filed with the clerk of the township not later than 20 days after the day that the notice of decision was given. The notice of appeal must set out the objection to the bylaw and the reasons in support of the objection, accompanied by the required fee. So we'll move on to the file reports. Thank you. I don't know. I don't have, I've got a loud voice, but not that loud.
Thank you very much. The purpose of my report is to address council. I apologize for my back. Council, thank you very much for hosting this public meeting. I wish, just put it up closer there. The property that we're talking about this evening is part of Lot 5, Concession 10, former Township of Dalhousie. As the REIT has indicated, this is an official plan amendment and a zoning amendment public hearing that was originally started back in March of 2023. At that point in time, the application was deferred, or consideration of the application was deferred to allow the applicant to address a number of issues that were brought forward at the first public meeting. I think it's important to stress at this point in time that the ask before council relates to your official plan amendment and your zoning amendment. There is also two other processes that are running somewhat concurrent with this. There is the Aggregate Resource Act site plan license application that has been submitted and received comments, and I believe many people here this evening have participated in that process. There's also a need for an amendment to the Lanark County official plan, and that typically happens after the local council has considered an amendment to the local plan. And so it's anticipated that there will be additional public meetings before Lanark County in the future associated with their official plan amendment. The actual amendment itself is to take the lands from their existing designation as rural communities and waterfront community to mineral aggregate resource policy area -PIT. The zoning bylaw is similar in its nature in that it's taking it from rural zone and from a mineral aggregate reserve holding and requested to go into the mineral aggregate PIT zone category. Again, this is a very unique planning process in Ontario in that council's responsibility is official plan and zoning, but the detailed site plan rests with the province. That's not normally the case with most development applications. And so we all have a tendency to want to speak about the very specific details. But I ask council to keep in mind your role in looking at it from a general standpoint and determining whether the principle of development is being established for this development. One of the things, because there is both the county and the township involved with this process, we had meetings early on and it was agreed that the township would be responsible for the registry of all public comments that have come in. And we've made every effort to document those and to stay in communication with those people that have provided comment and giving them notice of events such as this public meeting. We also have a complete catalog of all the comments received. It's here this evening. It's part of the public record, and it will be added to as we move forward. I'm not going to get into all the details associated with the change in the application from the first time it was presented to you to tonight. I'm going to leave that to my friend Neil, representing the applicant. One of the other points that I think is important to appreciate is that there have been some studies that were prepared by the applicant that have been peer-reviewed through the county and the township. And those relate to environmental impact reports, noise or acoustic reports, and traffic impact reports. And there is a summary of those comments in my report, and they're appended to my report as well. The application, I did say I wasn't going to do this, but I am going to a little bit. The application has changed significantly from its first iteration. Originally, it was about twice the size. It was a 24-hour-a-day operation. It's been reduced down significantly to a 15-hour-a-day operation. The size of the operation is reduced from 1 million tons a year down to 500,000 tons a year. And the maximum number of trucks per hour is decreased from 30 to 15. So there has been change to the application, and we'll hear about that in some detail tonight. I think we're all very familiar with the property. I'm not going to get into the verbiage that's in my report about the characteristics of the property, other than to say that the lands are abutting Barbers Lake, and Wheeler's Pancake House. And I did identify in my report that Barbers Lake is part of an ecosystem that's a cold water stream, a cold water environment that does support a native brook trout population. And that Wheeler's Pancake House is one of the signature destinations associated with Lanark County's claim to being the maple syrup capital of Ontario. The planning context under which this decision is to be made is governed by the provincial policy statement. And I'd like to clarify that we're speaking about the 2020 provincial policy statement. There was a 2024 policy statement that came in, but as is planning protocol, you deal with the policies as they existed on the day of the application. And so in this regard, we're speaking about the 2020 PPS, though it's worth saying that they're very similar to 2024 and 2020. The provincial policy statement, I think, is extremely important to this discussion. There's several points that I'd like to stress. First is that it says clearly that as much mineral aggregate resource as realistically possible shall be made available as close to markets as possible. It also states that the demonstration of need for mineral aggregate resources, including the type, supply, demand analysis, shall not be required. It also states that extraction shall be undertaken in a manner that minimizes social, economic, and environmental impacts. And the policies also state that aggregate resources should be protected from non-compatible uses. There is a section 2.5.2.5 which states that activities which would preclude or hinder the establishment of new operations or access to the resource shall only be permitted if the resource use is not feasible, the proposed land use or development serves a greater long-term public interest, or the interest of the public safety and environmental impacts are addressed. I've also contained a detailed analysis of the Lanark County policies. I'm going to submit to council and the public today that those policies are not as relevant to this application as is the provincial policy statement and the township's own official plan policies. The Lanark County official plan is not consistent with the 2020 PPS. It's not been updated. And so your township official plan is updated. It is consistent with the 2020 PPS. And I submit to you, those policies are more germane than the county policies. Our policies in the official plan talk about the studies that are required, whether it's hydrogeologic, noise, vibration, and they need to demonstrate conclusively that the proposed extraction operation can proceed without negative impacts on existing non-extraction development. There is, the original proposal did not capture Barbers Lake in that it did not recognize the waterfront community policies of our official plan. The revised proposal does acknowledge the waterfront communities, and they have provided some analysis. I think there may be a difference of opinion on interpretation, and we'll get into that at a future point. All of which is to say, the applicant is proposing that the waterfront community designation be 150 meters deep as per direction in the OP. It's my position that it's broader than that, and it's more associated with the view shed of the lake, what can be seen when you're on the lake, as opposed to a specific distance. I think I did go into some detail about the policies in the official plan that are similar to the provincial policy statement. points related to your job determining whether this is appropriate use of land. The plant policy does speak in some detail about compatibility and the need for new uses to be compatible with existing uses. We have, as part of the planning process, this application has been circulated to the Algonquins of Ontario and the Métis of Ontario. We have also had, at the staff level, productive discussions with Chief Doreen Davis, and we're thankful for her time and her wisdom on this application. There have also been numerous public comments, and again, they're here this evening. The public comments in general, I've grouped them together. There's comments on the negative impacts on the ecosystem and the Coldwater Creek and Barbers Lake. There's negative impacts on Wheeler's Pancake House business operation. There's statements regarding occurrence of uranium in the bedrock, impacts on water levels and groundwater monitoring, traffic, dust, noise, water quality impacts, and general concerns about below water table extraction. Anyone that has comments this evening that are verbal, we do request that you follow it up with a written comment by September 19th. The reason we ask for the written comments is that sometimes we don't capture the intent of what the verbal was. And so if we have written comments, we can make sure that we accurately capture your comments. And so it's not a requirement, it's a respectful request. The last thing I wanted to do, Council, is indicate that staff have been engaged with Kavanaugh Construction and their team during the last sort of 5 months since the application was submitted. We have indicated to them a number of concerns that we've had with the proposal. Some of it related to the number of entrances, some of it related to the potential undermining of the roads. We've also spoken about retaining existing natural vegetation along Highland line. And we've had specific comments about Barbers Lake and the impact that may happen on that chunk of land. The general question of land use compatibility was also advanced, and we think that that's where most of the discussion with council should be focused. The next steps, just to finalize my report tonight, the next steps would be to have direction from council for myself and staff to prepare a report with a recommendation to council on actions related to the applications before you. And we're anticipating that that would happen in October. Chair, that's the end of my report. I am here for the evening. I am available for questions from council.
Thank you, Forrest. And now I'll ask Neil, please note you do the presentation for council, or Kavanaugh's.
Good evening, members of council. My name is Neil Dreger. I'm a planner with MHPC Planning here on behalf of Kavanaugh. We've also got Phil White from Kavanaugh and members of our project team. We've given we've got a brief PowerPoint presentation, and I know Nicole's going to be putting it up. I really want to keep my remarks brief. This is your opportunity to hear from the public. Yes, it's important to hear from the applicant, but I want to make sure the public has enough time. But I do want to touch on some of the key points, specifically the changes that Forbes was alluding to with respect to the application.
Is it the first time, Nicole?
There you go.
Thank you, Nicole. We can carry on to the next slide, please, thank you. Just as Forbes alluded to, there's two important pieces of legislation that have applications, and that's both the Planning Act and the Aggregate Resource Act. I want to touch a bit about on the Aggregate Resource Act. Forbes has highlighted the status of the planning applications, but I do want to provide an update with respect to the Aggregate Resource Act application. Next slide, please. So a little bit about a chronology. The applications were submitted in January 2023. The township first held a public meeting in March. What I would say is for the Aggregate Resource Act license process, the consultation process is very similar to what's been done through the municipal planning process. There's what we call a 2-year consultation period, and that occurred between April of 2023 and April of 2025. Essentially what's been done, we circulate notices, we host open house, there's been a project website established, and really the opportunity is provided to the community and agencies to submit comments. Those who felt their comments were not answered can file what's known as an objection. So we have several objections, there's around 100 objections that we have remaining under the Aggregate Resource Act application. We started out with a number of about 210, 220, so it's now down to 100. So where the Aggregate Resource Act license application is currently, it's with the province, their Ministry of Natural Resources. They then have the decision to refer this to the Ontario Land Tribunal, which is the likely outcome that will occur as the next step through that process. Next slide, please. So I wanted to touch on the changes that have been made to the application. So on the screen and on the slide, we've identified some of the key aspects from the original proposal and what's changed. In terms of the license area and the extraction limit, those have both been reduced. Those changes were communicated earlier this year. The maximum proposed annual tonnage limit has been cut in half from 1 million to 500,000 tons. Then the hours of operation. The Kavanaugh applied for a 24-hour operation. That was then reduced to 15 hours a day, as Forbes noted. That has since been reduced to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. daily. The other piece of that change that Kavanaugh's committed to is that shipping would be prohibited during half-load season. Site accesses, Forbes noted that your staff identified some concerns with respect to the locations that were identified in the number. Initially 4 site accesses were proposed, 2 to each extraction area on either side of Anderson Lane. That's been reduced to 2 in total, 1 per extraction area. Aggregate recycling is no longer proposed as part of the application, so that means no asphalt storage, no concrete storage, no concrete processing. And then the truck traffic, particularly as a result of reducing the tonnage limit, the maximum number of trucks leaving the pit during what's known as the peak hours or busiest time is 15 per hour. Next slide, please. A couple changes that we just wanted to highlight to the operations plan. There's been a lot of focus and effort with respect to visual impacts along Highland Line and both with Barber's Lake. The area in green that's shown along Highland Line will have a tree screen planted with spruce, pine and birch between the berm and the property limit of Highland Line. Then there's also been berms removed from certain areas where they were not required for noise. And the purpose of that is to maintain existing mature vegetation within those setback areas, particularly in the northwest corner of extraction area 2, but then also along Anderson Lane and as well as the wetland next to Barber's Lake. The idea there is to maintain the vegetation that's currently within those setbacks without having to disturb those areas. Next slide, please. With respect to the rehabilitation plan, as a result of the changes with respect to the extraction limit being reduced, The pond size, particularly on extraction area 2, is reduced in size, but essentially there will be a pond on each side of Anderson Lane, and then there will be what are known as shallow littoral zones, which are areas that are created for aquatic habitat at the slope of the water. And then there's also vegetation plantings that would occur within those areas. What I would say just on the aggregate resource site plans which we've shown, all of this information has been put on Kavanaugh's project website. We've shown the iterative changes that have been made. All changes that have been made have been shown in red line. They're confusing documents. There's lots of notes. We're trying to make sure people understand what has changed through each iteration of the process. So those are on Kavanaugh's website. Next slide, please. With respect to the submission materials, there's a range from noise and water and archaeology and traffic, but I also wanted to highlight some of the additional work that's been undertaken and just comment on a few of them. As Forbes noted, there's been peer reviews undertaken. The peer reviews have been for traffic, natural environment, noise, and hydrogeology. So as a result of that, there's been additional work, changes made to the application and responses to those peer reviews. There's also been a planning addendum report to address what Forbes has been discussing with respect to the waterfront community designation. And then one of the bigger pieces that we heard initially through the submission of the application was the presence of uranium in the area. So WSP undertook an investigation. I would note for that study specifically, it has been reviewed with the province, both through Ministry of Natural Resources and Ministry of Environment. And the recommendations that they've been provided have been incorporated on the updated site plan that's been provided. There's also been a visual assessment, which I'll touch on shortly, and then updated work with respect to the traffic impacts and noise impacts. Next slide, please. And I will note all the materials that are listed here are included on the project website. I want to just quickly highlight the visual assessment that Forbes is returning to as it's newer information that's been worked on over the last few months. As part of better understanding the relationship between Barker's Lake, the wetland, the vegetation areas surrounding the lake, and the site itself, we use what's called essentially an ArcGIS 3D tool. The purpose of using that tool is to figure out what portions of this site are visible from certain surrounding areas. So what we did is we focused on views from Barker's Lake towards the site. We also plugged in a few operational scenarios. It's important that we just didn't stick with what's there today. We wanted to understand what it would look like if extractions occurring to its full depth, so basically where the above water pit floor would be, but then also understanding what it would look like with the processing plant operating at its highest elevation with stockpiles, to try and understand what that impact would look like. Next slide, please. To help with the visual assessment, Kavanaugh did fly a drone along Barker's Lake to capture images. So what we're looking at, and if you start from the picture on the top left, and then you work to the right, and you kind of work your way down to the bottom left, it's kind of like a Z shape for those of us looking at the screen this way, that's getting closer and closer to the site. So we're starting out furthest on the east end of the lake, and then heading towards the site. So these are images that are shot at approximately 4 meters above the water level. So this information helped with the visual assessment to identify the vegetation communities in the area, but also to further supplement the work that's been done. So what the visual assessment shown is during those operating scenarios that we've looked at, there are no portions of the site that are visible from Barker's Lake. And one of the reasons there's several reasons why that's occurred. One of the main ones is elevation change. In terms of what you're able to see from the lake, but then also at the closest point, there's a 100-meter setback between the licensed boundary of the proposed pit and the edge of Barker's Lake. Between that area, there's several different vegetation communities, and that offers a significant screening element that was picked up through the viewshed assessment. So all of this work was done to try to provide additional information and technical work with respect to the visual impacts on Barker's Lake and what views could be seen from the lake towards the site. Next slide, please. So this is the last slide, and I just wanted to highlight sort of what I'm calling the two key moments where significant changes have been made. You know, the first was in January earlier this year, so I talked a bit about some of those changes, and then just to focus and re-emphasize the changes that have been made recently, all of which has been, you know, communicated out to our public objectors through the Aggregate Resource Act process, but also recognizing the opportunity we had here at the public meeting to present these changes. So the shipping is now prohibited during half load season. That went along with reducing the hours of operation further to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then the entrances to the sites have been reduced from 4 to 2 in total, so 1 per extraction area. And then there's been changes with respect to maintaining vegetation within setbacks of selected areas of the sites where there's more mature vegetation rather than disturbing those areas and placing a berm. And then there will also be additional trees planted between the berm and Highland line, and a lot of that comes to where there's specific areas where we would anticipate there will be views of the berm specifically. So the idea is the berm helps with the noise impacts and to screen the operations, but we also want to find a way of enhancing that visually. So it's not just looking at the side of the berm from Highland line, that there will be trees planted between the two. And then the other thing I would note is the phasing and the direction of extraction have changed as a result of the work through the visual assessment. This is trying to orient which way extraction proceeds into the site so that we're limiting how much views there are of those extraction areas, both from Highland Line, but also from Barber's Lake and other adjacent properties. So with that, I believe that is our last slide. And once again, thank you for having us here, and certainly encourage you to hear from members of the public. And we're happy to answer questions as you direct read, you just let us know.
So I'll start off, does any member of council have questions for you?
Just one quick question.
Microphone.
I can speak loud enough. Just want to know, when did the zone, or the drone footage, when was that recorded, those pictures? What date? Sorry.
Okay, go backward. Through the read, I believe that the drone was flown in July of this year. So July, I don't know the specific date, but I'm looking at Phil, July 2025. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Just with reference to your discussion about the ARA process and M&R, am I correct in understanding that M&R is opposed to your application?
So through the read, M&R does have outstanding comments on the application. So Kavanaugh is working with M&R to resolve those. Just to get an understanding of, you know, where M&R started with this application, there was about 50 comments they had on it. So between the site plans, the water report, natural environment, we're currently left with 9 comments remaining. So, you know, Kavanaugh's hopeful they'll be able to resolve, but yes, there are still remaining issues with the M&R. Typically in situations like that, from my experience, what occurs, you know, M&R will want to ensure that their comments are addressed, right? If they have an outstanding objection, they won't take the next step to say, yes, we're good with this, if that makes sense. So there will be continued discussions with them with the hope of resolving those concerns. But yes, there are a few matters remaining, and I would say that particularly the site plan details. Some of the notes that have been developed and further refinements to those.
Anybody else? So now I'd like to invite Chief Doreen Davis to address council first.
Seems to be working.
It is now. We got to talk together for the chief.
Can you hear me?
Not very well. Get very close to that mic.
Very tight? Oh, there we go. Oh, well, let's do the interview.
Put my glasses on. Bear with me, cheers. Yeah.
Do you want me to put a light on that for you? Would that help?
I guess it's just awkward, I'm gonna maybe.
You little, like,
Then I can really see there. Is that better?
Lights.
Maybe if I hold you, I might want to sit in this chair. Yeah, maybe that's okay. And then I can make
is the light any better?
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. Quay, Free McLaren Councilors, Snimacobi First Nation, Shabbatawattawan members, sisters and brothers. I am Chief Doreen Davis, Ojama Kennedy Onquad, Iquay, Indigenous Cause, Equal Cloud Woman is my spirit name. Shabbatawattawan and Dayon, Shabbatawattawan is where I live. Makwadori with the Black Bear Nation. Tanakiman is my homeland. We are here today where we have been since time immemorial and will continue to be here for the next 7 generations and beyond. Throughout the millennia, we have welcomed many nations to conduct trade and to make alliances. And I welcome all of you here now to continue the important work that we share as stewards and guardians of Mother Earth, the water, wetlands, flora, and fauna. Our homeland has long been occupied and reshaped according to European ideas of land. Its resources have been taken for profit, and little of our traditional territory remains for the Algonquin people to develop in our own interests. For generations, governments of Ontario and Canada have claimed ownership to our lands. They have dictated strategies of exploration and control, sought to diminish our rights, and at times even denied our very existence. Through laws, policies, and the influence of media and education, they have placed Algonquin interests behind all others, reinforcing paternalism, racism, and fear. While these governments speak of environmental protection and social progress, their systems too often serve profit and state revenue over Indigenous self-determination. They act outside the relationship of trust once established with the Crown, and they fail to uphold their constitutional obligation to our people. Yet not all Canadians accept this. Many stand with us, sharing our vision of justice, equity, and sustainable economy, and the protection of the environment. These are the relationships we seek to build and strengthen as we move forward. For us, the land is not something to be possessed. It is alive, with a spirit and a purpose beyond human use. Our responsibility is to walk lightly, to interfere as little as possible, and to remember that the land remains long after we are gone. We are taught that taking more than we need today ensures that our children will have less tomorrow. When we use the land's gifts, we must do so with intention, avoiding greed and exploitation. Any development must include a plan for restoring and protecting the natural processes that sustain us all. A true provider, a true warrior, must seek knowledge. We cannot make change blindly. Before altering the land, we must understand its relationship, its processes, and the long-term effect of our actions. Only with knowledge can we overcome the ignorance. The time has come when we can no longer ignore our duty. As the land suffers, so do we. If the rivers, forests, and animals disappear, so too will our people. It is our responsibility to take leadership in protecting the land from harmful or meaningless development. We are of the earth, deeply connected in body and spirit. Every creature has a purpose, and every member of the community has a role. Development must never be for profit alone. It should strengthen the community, involve all members, and leave us better as a people. Finally, we recognize that we do not walk this path alone. Many beyond our community share the responsibility to care for the land. We must treat them as brothers and sisters, listen with respect, and work together towards a future where all life is honored. This is the way of the Shabbat Bajwan, to walk gently, to take only what is needed, to honor our elders, to protect the land and our people, to build relationships that respect creation. These teachings are not only for us, they are for all who wish to live in balance with the earth. These words were spoken in 2010, yet they were ignored. My hope is that by sharing them again tonight, they will be heard with open hearts, and that we will not allow history to repeat itself. Language.
Thank you, Chief Davis. And just a quick reminder of our protocol, please keep comments respectful, limit remarks to 5 minutes and focus on new ideas. If a point has already been raised, I may gently move us along so everyone has a chance to be heard. And maybe put my arm up when there's 30 seconds left, if that sounds good enough, leftover time for people or a minute, whatever you feel sounds good, just to give you a warning, okay? Who wants to go first?
Okay, maybe just leave it in.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tim Wheeler, and I live on Barbers Lake. Thank you to the council for holding this meeting here tonight at the Agricultural Hall. It's very much appreciated. And Chief McWitch to Chief Doreen, your words tonight of wisdom and knowledge. Many people have raised the concern regarding the below water table aspect of this application. The risks to the wells, the maple forest in Barbers Lake, and the Long Sioux Creek are too great and cannot be reversed once the damage is done. Other municipalities have recognized this, and they have acted. In the township of Muskoka Lakes, the official plan requires a 2,000 meter buffer between gravel pits and lakes. This policy was recently upheld by the Ontario Land Tribunal in July of 2025. The applicant was asking for a gravel pit to be located 750 meters from a lake. The judges at the OLT in July of 25 stated, no, it's 2,000 meters. The MPP for that riding is Graydon Smith, who also happens to be the Ontario's Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. This is important to note because sometimes the public is told that we need more gravel pits to solve the housing crisis. The truth is, there is no housing crisis caused by the lack of gravel pits. By contrast, this application that's being presented to you tonight has only a 30-meter setback from the wetlands of Barbers Lake. And it even includes an outlet from gravel pit water to enter Barbers Lake. My first two questions tonight, through the chair, Mr. DeRuiter, when will your client provide the community with appropriate setbacks for Barber's Lake, Long Sioux Creek, and the wetlands, the north Long Sioux Creek. The second question is, when will your client remove below water table extraction from this application? Thank you.
No.
No,
Sorry.
Neil will make answer that question online afterwards.
Thank you, did not realize that. I'll be quick then. I thought that would take some time. So, I just was making notes with the township planner regarding the comment about this application's been largely reduced. That doesn't mean things don't still break and it's a bad idea. So just, maybe it takes longer to damage the lakes and the wetlands, and you don't do it as quick because you're only working 12 hours a day, not 24, the same result will happen. The other thing is, look at that. You know, close to market, was it this council that licensed the Arnott Farm in 2022 over at Pine Grove? And I'd ask council, what's that property doing right now? Is it being cash cropped, or is the aggregate being extracted from it? And as far as the viewscapes from Barber's Lake in 2020, I'm 5'9" on a good day, and I was watching the trees felled from my dock, so I'm lower than the drone flight, and I was watching the trees be felled on this property and listening to that logging. So I'm not certain that the viewscapes will all work out. But anyway, I'll wrap up to say, your councillors, your votes very much matter on this, absolutely matters. And I would just ask that you would really consider the direction you want the township to go in when you are considering how you will vote. Thank you tonight.
Yeah, I'll just remind everybody, if there's no questions, if you want to put a question in, file it with Kavanaugh's through Neil afterwards.
Good evening, council. My name is George McKenzie. My wife Sylvia and I live on Barber's Lake as well. As members of council consider the question of how to vote on the zoning and official plan amendments needed for the Highland Line pit to proceed, I would like to suggest that you look at related economic questions. Pit license applications do not require an economic study, so none has been done. The provincial aggregate levy from the proposed pit could provide the township with $75,000 per year if the maximum 500,000 tons per year is extracted. How do you think that will compare to the road upkeep costs? The sand and gravel will all have to be hauled away over the Highland Line, which presently is chip top, not asphalt, with no shoulders or center lines. It is a road never designed for the additional traffic or heavy multi-axle trucks this proposal would require. The township is responsible for the cost of road improvements and maintenance, not Kavanaugh Construction. I cannot imagine that $75,000 or less per year will cover these costs. Has the township done a study to consider the possible economic damage this pit could inflict on Wheeler's Pancake House and Maple Museum, as well as other businesses? Through 40 years of hard work and smart business decisions, this business attracts over 40,000 visitors per year to the restaurant, museums, and walking trails. Many of these customers travel from outside the immediate area. Some of them come from other countries. They are undoubtedly buying gas, staying in hotels, visiting stores and other attractions before returning home. What is the economic benefit for the township and Lanark County by this large number of visitors? The natural setting on 1,000 acres of maple forest is an essential part of the success of Wheeler's business enterprise. If customers turn away because the final 1.5 kilometers approaching their entrance has been transformed into a noisy, dusty pit operation, how much of an economic loss will this be for the township? If the water table drops, the maple trees are no longer healthy, and 40,000 fewer travel through the township each year. It seems likely that more will be lost economically than could possibly be generated in aggregate levies. I do not think there has been any sort of economic study done to look at the balance sheet from this perspective. Surely it is an important issue that deserves serious study. If it becomes apparent that Lanark County favors aggregate development over renewable agritourism, as exemplified by Wheeler's Pancake House and Maple Museum, what message will you be sending to any entrepreneur considering the township as the location for their business? Many of us would like to believe that our councillors see the future of development in Lanark Highlands as much more than additional gravel pits. We believe there is much more potential here than large, huge holes reaching below the water table. Thank you for your time.
I'm Jeff Mason. I live at 101 Leo J. Lane on the north shore of Barbers Lake. I'd like to begin by thanking Council for allowing me the chance to speak here tonight. I'll be addressing shortcomings in two of the major studies done to support the proposed pit. The existence of uranium in the Barbers Lake Pluton, which lies below the sand and gravel that would be extracted, was mentioned briefly in March of 2023 by a member of the public at the first meeting dealing with this proposal. People worry a great deal about potential release into the air, soil, and water of radon, thorium, plutonium, and other deadly products in the uranium decay chain. WSP Golder was commissioned by Kavanaugh to study the potential presence of uranium and thorium in the bedrock, overburdened surface water, and groundwater on the site. The report was published in October of 2024. Its introduction states that the investigation was done to address concern raised by both the public and regulators. The stakes here are very high. Contamination by radioactive materials would be among the worst of environmental disasters. The question of township liability in such a disaster is ominous. Anyone seeking reassurance had to be disappointed by Attachment A, Important Information and Limitations of Report, which says, WSP makes no representation or warranty whatsoever as to the sufficiency of its scope of work or the purpose sought by the recipient of this report. In other simpler words, they did not prove what they set out to prove. They go on to say that conditions that WSP interprets to exist may differ from those that actually exist. Before you vote on zoning changes needed to allow the pit to proceed, the concerns raised by the public and regulators about uranium contamination need to be answered. This report falls well short of providing those answers. The authors clearly admit that. Possible changes to ground and surface water is another major concern for many of us. If the water table is affected, Barbers Lake, Long Sioux Creek, the maple forests, the surrounding wetlands, and the wells we depend on will all be affected. Friends of Lanark Highlands hired Chris Rancourt, a hydrogeologist with CCR Environmental, to review the level 1 and 2 water reports done by WSP Golder. Mr. Rancourt pointed out that although the water studies claim to focus on groundwater movement in the intended extraction area, none of the monitored test holes used in reaching their conclusions were located in that area. Mr. Rancourt concluded that WSP Golder should either provide additional hydrogeological data not yet released or conduct further studies. As with the uranium study, more information is needed before you could possibly cast an informed vote on the zoning changes the pit application would require to proceed. Section 224 of the Ontario Municipal Act states, "It is the role of council to represent the public and to consider the well-being and interests of the municipality." The section goes on to say, in other words, key responsibilities as a councillor are to support the municipality and its operations while ensuring that the public and municipality's well-being and interests are maintained. I'll conclude by saying that supporting zoning changes to allow the Highland line pit without knowing more about the potential harm from uranium or from changes to our water table would go against your responsibilities under the Municipal Act. In my remaining 30 seconds, I would like to ask Mr. Simons a question. It's my understanding that since the passage of Bill 23 in Ontario, members of the public will not be able to participate in an appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal unless council votes against the zoning and official plan amendments or declines to vote on the amendments. Is my understanding correct?
We'd ask no questions, but anybody is open to appeal. It doesn't matter which way we go, right?
So there are no third-party appeals of land use decisions in the province of Ontario for official plans or zoning amendments. The property owner has a right of appeal. Agencies and specified persons, which include First Nations, have rights of appeal. Neighbors do not have rights of appeal.
Sorry, did you identify yourself? Did you please identify yourself?
Yeah, my name's Forbes Simon. I'm the Township Senior Planner. I'm a planner with the firm JT2G Consulting Inc. and registered as a professional planner in the province of Ontario since 1997.
Council members, my name,
Yeah.
You gotta get like 6 inches or less.
Council members, my name is Tricia Jones, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. As a resident of Highland Line, I've taken the time to better understand the scale and impact of aggregate extraction in Lanark Highlands. What I found is both startling and deeply concerning. There are 51 active aggregate pits in our township. Of these, 4 have unlimited annual tonnage, and 3 of those belong to Kavanaugh. Estimating the unlimited sites at 1 million tons annually, Lanark Highland holds licenses for 13.28 million tons per year. Over 5 million tons are licensed to Kavanaugh alone, 38% of the township's total. With a population of 5,737 people, this equates to 2,315 tons per person annually, and that is 193 times greater than the Ontario average of 12 tons per person annually. This positions Lanark Highlands as disproportionately burdened by aggregate activity relative to its population. While the township's own usage data is unavailable, Lanark County uses 2.6 million tons annually. Given that our township holds approximately 50% of the county's licenses, it's clear that a significant portion of the county's aggregate is extracted here. We are licensed to produce 5 times more aggregate than the entire county consumes annually. We are producing far more than we use. Ontario's total usage is 164 million tons annually, meaning Lanark Highlands holds licenses for 8% of the province's supply, despite representing just 0.035% of its population. Our township's licensed tonnage is equivalent to the entire city of Ottawa's annual tonnage. usage, a city with nearly 1.1 million people. According to the ARMP, there were 42 active pits in 2022 and 51 today. An average of 3 new pit licenses per year are being issued. The 2024 township budget shows $2,000 in aggregate extraction fees. At 13 cents per ton, this suggests only 1.5 million tons are being extracted annually, leaving 11.8 million tons unused. This data leads me to several conclusions. A, if the existing pits aren't operating at capacity, issuing more licenses or a bylaw amendment is unjustified. B, dormant sites are not being rehabilitated and delayed restoration poses environmental and safety risks. C, the township and county's own usage does not warrant further expansion. D, the $200,000 in extraction fees the township receives is dwarfed by the $2 million plus spent on road maintenance. Raising the question, are we subsidizing the wear and tear caused by aggregate transport without adequate compensation?
I would want everybody to please refrain from clapping, we're trying to have the speaker speak. Thank you.
The financial return is minimal compared to the infrastructure costs, the degradation of our natural assets, and the long-term damage to our community. Council must reject this bylaw amendment, not just to protect our lakes, wetlands, and aquifers, but to affirm that Lanark Highlands is more than a quarry zone. We are a living, breathing community, and we all deserve better.
Good evening, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for this opportunity to address the council through you. My name is Carolyn Mason, and I also live on Barbers Lake. Mr. Chair and council, I have asthma. A particular concern to me are the health risks of this proposed pit, not just for me, but for our whole community. From the beginning, I have had many concerns, and I've registered these in the ongoing licensing process with the NNRF. I hope that the wider public is aware of the hundreds of objections made in opposition to this pit. Despite all of the technical studies done, many very serious questions remain. Certainly the NNRF thinks so. As of this week, Kavanaugh has failed to convince the ARA authorities, and the ARA tells me that they still have not approved the license. The studies have not satisfied me either. My particular worry as an asthmatic is air quality. Despite me targeting this concern in letters from the very beginning of the license process, the applicant's answer always came back the same: we meet provincial guidelines. I did not understand that at first, because how could our government not care to safeguard the air we breathe? Unsatisfied, I did my own research, and here is what I learned. There is no air quality study because the province does not require one to be done. Think on that. Air quality can only be questioned after the pit is operational through the Ministry of the Environment and the Ministry of Labour. My questions to Health Canada, Ontario's Ministry of Health, and other agencies went nowhere, as pit approval is not under their oversight. So as you can see, the Highland Line pit application falls into a jurisdictional black hole where air quality is concerned. Responsibility now falls to you, Council. You must take air quality concerns into consideration because our circumstances here are uniquely hazardous. First, we know that the site will stir up harmful fine particulate. I'm not talking about the dust that builds up on your car. I'm talking about the stuff called PM 2.5. Tiny particles with a diameter of 2.5 micrometers or less that can enter your lungs and cause disease. You can't see them, but they are there, especially when stirred up by industrial activity. The only way to protect breathing is with the masks we got so tired of a few years ago. But here, the dangerous air quality is much worse than at an ordinary pit site. The Highland line unique location is well documented because of the level of bedrock uranium in the Barbers Lake pluton, up to 20 times higher than other nearby deposits. The worry is not necessarily that the uranium itself would become airborne. Don't get distracted by that. There's a natural hazard threat we can see immediately without any costly study. The radon that comes out of the bedrock every day all around here is well known. We have monitors in our homes, and we are a documented radon hotspot. And usually, radon disperses in the open air and is only a threat when in an enclosed space. But not here. Frighteningly, those invisible radon particles are naturally drawn to heavier PM 2.5 particles, and they combine. So the radon would not disperse as usual. It would cling to the fine particulate, and these lingering particles would become hazardous radioactive aerosols, essentially floating, readily inhaled toxins. Worse, this radon dust particle naturally decays, changing into radioactive polonium and then radioactive lead as part of the uranium decay chain. We breathe in these invisible particles and they lodge in our lung tissue or pass into our bloodstream. The health impacts could be catastrophic, including cancer and stroke. These damaging particles would not remain on the site. They'd sail away on the prevailing winds or hitch rides on vehicles. Residents, workers, tourists, cyclists, hikers, fishers, and those far away from the site enjoying their own backyards would all be at risk. I'm not making this up. Definitive research was done by the Harvard University Department of Environmental Health in 2022 and published in the highly respected Journal of the American Heart Association. It has since become widely accepted and studied further. Mr. Chairman, you and Council can now address this issue by taking a decision demanding this hazardous site to remain undisturbed. Don't allow private industry to put citizens' health at risk. This is a foreseeable harm for which you must now take responsibility. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening, Council. My name is Tom Shoebridge. I have 3 points that I'd like to make. First one is the quality of living in this area. I think, if I may read the audience correctly, that's why everybody is here. They're concerned about the quality of living and the effect that this pit may have. I think we're lucky in one way that we have the council that we have. They all live in Lanark County. Nobody's parachuted in. Some of you have spent your entire life here. Others have chosen, like me and many of the people here, to live here because it's a great place to live. I love this area, and I'm afraid that this pit is going to destroy part of the image and the lifestyle that we appreciate and that we've come to accept as being important as Lanark County. People everywhere envy the kind of water and air and recreation that we have. So I think to suggest that this project, which could be a huge blight on our image, could go forward, I think is somewhat foolhardy. The second point is the duty of care. And you know what it is, but I'm not sure all the audience does. And that is that every elected official, not only in Ontario, but everywhere, has a duty of care to make sure that things that happen under their jurisdiction, under their decision, has to maintain and promote the safety and well-being of their supporters, in this case, taxpayers, in this case, citizens, in this case, the community. So any kind of fallout from this pit is really the responsibility of you. And that's the third part, is that as an elected official, again, everywhere, you have both a responsibility and a liability. That you have to be responsible, that what you're suggesting is the best thing that can happen to this area and to the quality of life that is happening in Lanark County. If not, then I think you have to make a different kind of decision. There are two local possibilities that could happen. One is what happened at the Tatlock quarry, in which there was spillage and there was environmental disaster around it. It affected the water and the property, and there were tens of thousands of dollars of reparations that had to be made. The second one is one that I just learned about at the Rideau Lakes Old Kingston Road south of Perth. They had a contaminated waste management site that they didn't take care in terms of deciding, and it has cost the municipality millions of dollars. Three things: quality of life and living in Lanark County. Secondly, responsibility and duty of care. And third, liability. Thank you.
Well said.
Mr. Chair, members of council, my name is Rosemary Taylor, and I did a little science research study of the quality of the quality of the water in Long Sioux Creek. And the way I went about that was to actually look at all the little critters in the creek, and there are classifications of critters that grow in polluted water and critters that grow in unpolluted water. So based on my research, which I will give you a copy of after, all the sites, all 5 of the sites along Long Sioux Creek, upstream and downstream from the Kavanaugh proposed pit, all of them were very intolerant of pollution. And all the sites, the most common species was the stonefly and the mayfly. That's what the trout eat. And also the little mayfly nymphs. The conductivity, which is a measure of the ability of water to pass an electrical current, was extremely low. And again, that shows the pureness of the water in Long Sioux Creek. All these results indicate that the water there is pollution-free. My question is, what is Kavanaugh Construction Limited prepared to do to monitor the quality of water in Barbers Lake and Long Sioux Creek before, during, and after? Thank you.
Hi, council. I want to thank you for having this meeting in this building. Plenty of room for everybody. My name is Judy Hitchcock, and I live at the east end of Barbers Lake on Concession Road 9A, Dalhousie, with my family. Today I would like to talk about the December 6th, 2023 Auditor General Report. The report is titled, "Few inspections and limited enforcement of aggregate pits and quarries increase risk of violations such as over-extraction and incomplete rehabilitation." I want to share 6 of their findings. Number 1, the MNRF is failing to adequately inspect aggregate operations. There are 34 inspectors to cover Ontario. 34 inspectors to cover Ontario, and close to half of those have held their designation for less than 1 year, and only 16 conducted field inspections. Number 2, violations are widespread in aggregate industry. No wonder. Inspectors referred less than 1% of the 3,400 plus violations identified between 2018 and 2022. Less than 1% of the total. Number 3, the MNR is failing to enforce aggregate regulations. In 3 cases, operators exceeded their extraction limit by over 1,000%, but the ministry did not investigate, let alone charge them. Self-reporting is failing, surprise, surprise. There's no guarantee, number 5, there is no guarantee of rehabilitation of pits and quarries. The ministry has no process to ensure that aggregate pits and quarries are rehabilitated soon after extraction is complete. 1,524 sites with valid permits or licenses have lain dormant for at least 10 years, and 257 of them haven't extracted for more than 25 years. Number 6, Ontario's program for managing aggregate resources is not financially or environmentally stable. A 57-page comprehensive report reveals that legal violations are rampant and the provincial government is failing to protect lives and environment from the impacts of gravel mining industry. To council, your vote couldn't be any more obvious with what everybody's saying without getting emotional. And to Kavanaugh, well, this must be very embarrassing, I'm sure. People have lost trust and confidence in the industry. And by the way, the M&R, they're still objecting to this proposal. Have a good day, thank you.
My name is Janet Marenica, and I live on Elfin Maberly Road in Elfin, and I'm a fellow CPA. So my name is Janet Marenica, and I live on Elfin Maberly Road in Elfin, and I'm a fellow CPA. Sometimes finance is pretty complicated. Tonight, though, we've been receiving information that brings us all to ground, bringing proportions, bringing numbers, and so we have to really wonder, when we see a simple number, how simple can it be to tear it apart? So I'm going to go to the trucks. The proposal has gone from 30 trucks from the pit every hour to 15. When I looked at that number, I said it's leaving from the pit. But where do the trucks come from? They're not flying in from the sky.
Can you speak up?
Okay, so the fifth.
Yes, thank you, Bill.
So I looked at the number of 30 trucks, and now it's 15. And I said to myself, that's 15 trucks leaving from the pit. But where do they come from? They're not flying in from the sky. And as far as I know, there is no warehouse on the lot that stores trucks. So to get 15 trucks leaving that pit per hour, you actually need 30. And so I'd like to recognize that 15 equals 30 in this proposal. And I'm wondering how many other numbers that are as simple as that are not straightforward as we see. I'd like to bring up trees. I'm a person who, values trees, grows trees. Tonight, we heard the proposal, and if you remember the photos that were up on the screen, that the site with the drone from Barber's Lake, and that there is a berm that is there, and they're looking at planting more trees. We know how long it takes to grow a tree when the land is stable. A tree that's planted today, its leaf force, its breadth that actually would protect sound, takes anywhere from 10 to 20 years prior to it having an impact. But it also needs stable ground. Today, that photo shows stable ground. Once the pit is operational, there will be vibrations. Those trees will not survive. Just like Wheeler's property. So I wanted to bring the trees into the conversation today, because others also may have many things to say. Once the ground starts to shake, in addition to water, it's our trees. And there are many people who have trees, and they invest in them, but we also have a family corporation that is sustainable today because the ground is stable, but will not be with the ground shaking. Thank you very much for listening.
And am I on this mic?
Yeah.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I don't live on Barbers Lake, and I'm coming to speak from the perspective of a public health physician. And my concerns have to do with, sorry?
Your name, please.
Oh, sorry, I do have one, Cynthia Carver. I really do have public health concerns about this operation. Most of the studies that have been done in relation to the pit site. And my concern is, at this time, is in relation to the trucks. And that was just brought up, was very appropriate, because I was going to make the same point. That 15 trucks going one way, in fact, means another 15 coming back. All of these trucks are going to produce diesel fumes. They are all going to produce vibration. They are all going to produce dust, and they are all going to produce noise, and they are all going to produce traffic accidents. All of these are well-established public health issues. And one of the things I tried to find out was, where are these trucks going? We know they're going out from the pit onto Highland Line, but after that, I haven't been able to get a good answer. If these trucks are mostly going into Lanark, that's going to be a truck every 2 minutes coming down across the bridge and around the corner, presumably somewhere. Who's going to want to put a business in a town that has a truck every 2 minutes producing dust, and diesel fumes? Again, people have said to you before, you know, it's really the future that matters. And do we want a future of more aggregate, or do we want a future in which, say, the village of Lanark becomes a mini Perth? It services the lakes around, the cottagers, the recreational activities. And if we ruin it by having something like a truck every 2 minutes, added on to whatever trucks are still coming from Tatler, I think that, you know, there's no water and sewage in the town, and now there will be all this other contaminants. And as Carol Lee was making the point before, asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, these are all getting worse. The numbers are getting higher, and that will really be a problem in Lanark. So thank you for the opportunity.
Good morning. So, my name is Alex Stone. I'm a resident of Perth. I spent a lot of time up in Lanark Highlands. For the last 5 years, I've been doing annual bird surveys and other surveys near Barbers Lake. I am a biologist. That's my profession. So my first question is really a question of how did the peer review process go? The peer review process may not have actually been used on the ground. It looks like it was done from a desktop review. Generally, when I request a biologist to do work, is usually I need them to be on the ground and actually doing on-site and doing the work there. My other point is, when we talk about aggregate development, we're also talking about curtailing the use in the future for future residential and other compatible uses for waterfront communities. You can't build a house right beside an aggregate pit, it's not a compatible use. So it will curtail future plans in this waterfront community zoning. Yes, that's it. Thank you very much.
Through the chair, council. My name is Kathy Green. I live on Iron Mine Road on the Mississippi River, downstream from where Long Sioux Creek enters the Mississippi. I'm not opposed to aggregate extraction. I like road maintenance as much as the next guy. But we have learned a lot about the aggregate industry in Ontario in the last 2.5 years, and it's not looking good. Less than 2 years ago, as my friends have mentioned, the Auditor's General report gave a stinging indictment of Ontario's aggregate sector and the failure of the MNRF to monitor the industry. The report told us that the ministry inspected aggregate operations infrequently. The ministry lacked experienced inspectors. There are high rates of non-compliance at aggregate sites. The ministry rarely pursued charges despite high rates of non-compliance, and inspection reports were often incomplete or of poor quality. We've learned that the province has licensed 13 times the volume of aggregate utilized annually in Ontario, but that this is not relevant in a provincial approval process because the applicant is not required to prove a need for the material. We've learned that the impact on local quality of life and the degradation of local roads are not relevant in a provincial approval process either. But we're actually here tonight to talk about municipal policies, municipal priorities, and a municipal decision about amending our official plan. Cottagers and lakeside residents in the township of Muskoka Lakes had a great big win at the Ontario Land Tribunal this summer when their official plan's 2,000-meter buffer between local lakes and aggregate development sites was upheld in an appeal. This application for the Barbers Lake pit targets a complex site bordering wetlands, cold water trout habitat, and a waterfront community. There are species of endangered animals breeding there. If we were running out of aggregate, we might be prepared to take some risks, but we're not. We're not running out. The zoning amendment proposed would modify the zoning from mineral aggregate resources holding to mineral aggregate resources pit. I say we should continue holding this aggregate resource. 20 years ago, we didn't have iPhones. Now practically everyone in this room has one in their pockets. Maybe 20 years from now, we'll have new technologies to harvest this high-quality aggregate in a way that does not risk the environment and our local quality of life. After all the more accessible aggregate reserves have been exhausted, imagine the relief of our great-grandchildren that we saved this for them. You folks will be wreathed in glory if you vote this down. You, our municipal council, can stand up for our quality of life. You can stand up for our road maintenance budget, our water quality, our sugar bushes, all of our agriculture. You can stand up for our Lanark County scenic routes and our tourism. It's what we elected you to do. I know it's not an easy job. We are counting on you. Thank you.
Thank you, Council, for having us here tonight. I'm Angela Wheeler. I live in one of the 12 homes on Barbers Lake, and my family has been growing our business on the Highland line for the past 47 years. The Barbers Lake waterfront community and our business represent long-established land uses directly adjacent to the site. My entire life is within meters of this proposed pit, so I would like to address the issue of incompatibility. I am hopeful the township will uphold the intent of our official plan and prevent a zoning change that would allow for incompatible development. Firstly, typical of many lakes in our township, Barbers Lake is currently a healthy, peaceful, and quiet place to live. I appreciate that the applicant is ensuring the views from 1.5 meters above the lake surface will not change, but many of our homes are 15 or more meters above that with a different viewpoint to consider. The full impact of the proposed pit on the lake and waterfront community would be much more complex than what can be seen. What is even more significant would be the unavoidable dust, noise, silt, and harm to the health of the residents, lake, and surrounding environment. Dust and noise from an industrial operation are not a reasonable addition to a quiet waterfront community in our township. In response to community concerns, the applicant has stated that the licensed and extraction areas have been reduced. The extraction area was reduced in an undesirable part of Site 2, furthest from the lake. The most concerning extraction area in Site 1, adjacent to Barbers Lake, was not reduced, but actually increased by 1,000 square meters in the site plan. The buffer to the wetland shores of Barbers Lake remains the 30-meter minimum the province allows an applicant to request. There is still an outlet for pit water to flow directly into Barbers Lake, so the concerns remain. Secondly, our Pancake House, Sugar Camp, museums, and trails welcome visitors year-round from around the world. Our farm is the only rural Canadian experience for many, so the scenic drive and lack of city noise is an important part of the experience. This pit proposal represents the final 1.5 kilometers of the Highland line leading up to our entrance. The Highland line is included in many scenic driving tours at the local, county, and provincial tourism levels. But how could it continue to be if this application is approved? Our concerns over the risks to the 1,000 acres of sugar bush we tap have not been addressed. Maple trees are sensitive to environmental changes, and the limited information gathered in the hydrogeology reports do not adequately guarantee ground and surface water will not be impacted. Data from one of the 6 monitoring wells was ignored in the revisions, resulting in a 21-foot change in the maximum predicted water table. It is simply too risky and complex to accurately predict the outcome of digging into a sloped water table adjacent to our maple forest and the wells our business and homes rely on. I understand the township has no jurisdiction over whether below water table extraction is granted, but they do have control over zoning. The reason that was provided to us that this pit would be compatible with our business was that there are already pits on the Highland line. I would argue that because of the existing pits, it is asking too much for the Highland line to support another, even larger and much more visible pit, particularly below the water table, directly beside both our business and Barbers Lake. In closing, if protected, our business and Barbers Lake can remain healthy, sustainable, and productive for generations to come. I believe if the township changes the zoning on this site to aggregate extraction, they will be making it clear that aggregate is the top priority in Lanark Highlands, not our residents, tourism, agriculture, or our wetlands, lakes, and water.
Good evening, members of council. My name is Tim Schroeder. I'm a year-round resident of McDonald's Corners, living on the Highland line. As someone who lives just 120 meters from the proposed pit, I speak not only for myself, but for my neighbors who share deep concerns about the long-term impacts this project may have on our water, wildlife, and way of life. I appreciate the opportunity to speak this evening and formally request that council insist on addressing the multiple technical and environmental deficiencies that remain in this application. First, as a few others have alluded to earlier, the Ministry of Natural Resources Aggregate section continues to object to this license application due to outstanding concerns in groundwater and surface water protections. Their March 11, 2025 letter highlights 5 unaddressed recommendations. Install additional monitoring wells, establish additional surface water monitoring stations, incorporate SG2 into the monitoring program, increase the frequency of water level readings, develop trigger thresholds with an adaptive management response plan. None of these measures appear in revision 3 of the site plan dated September 8, 2025. Recent communication with Melanie Teichler, aggregate specialist with the MNR on September 9, 2025, confirmed that concerns have not been completely addressed. Her statement read, "At this time, the MNR still remains an objector of this application as we still have outstanding concerns. There are still additional objectors as well. Council should require the applicant to fully integrate the ministry's recommendations before proceeding." Second, the traffic impact study addendum, Castle Glen Consultants, May 30th, 2025, remains flawed. It counts only inbound truck trips, omitting outbound movements, and assumes 250 workdays, excluding weekends, despite the 7-day hauling proposal. Moreover, the study requests excavation within the 15-meter road allowance setbacks to improve sightlines. Township policy explicitly prohibits any development within that buffer zone. I urge council to reject any plan that encroaches on mandated setbacks. Third, site plan, page 2 of 5, confirms the presence of Category 1 and Category 2 landing turtle habitat adjacent to Barber's Lake. Provincial guidelines require a dedicated setback around critical turtle habitats, yet the current proposal treats the habitat itself as the buffer. Council must insist on a separate provincially compliant setback to protect this endangered species. Fourth, the acoustic assessment underestimates actual equipment noise by modeling contours from an 85 decibel baseline, even though site machinery operates between 103 and 120 decibels. This approach risks masking real noise exposure for neighbors. Before any license is granted, council should demand a revised acoustic study using accurate equipment sound levels. Finally, Canada's 30 by 30 conservation initiative aims to safeguard 30% of land and water by 2030. With Ontario currently near the bottom at only 11%, it is crucial that Lanark Highlands align local policies with this national goal. I ask council to clarify how this PIT application and future land use decisions will support meaningful progress toward 30 by 30. In light of these unresolved technical objections and broader environmental commitments, I respectfully request that council, 1, require the applicant to incorporate all MNR monitoring and management measures, 2, reject any excavation within the 15-meter road allowance setback, 3, enforce appropriate buffers around landing turtle habitat, 4, commission an accurate equipment-based noise impact analysis, 5, publicly endorse measurable 30 by 30 conservation targets in township planning documents, 6, decline the applicant's proposal for a bylaw amendment. Thank you for your careful consideration of these critical issues. We need to ensure this proposal meets both regulatory standards and our community's environmental values before proceeding further. Council's decision will set a precedent for how rigorously we defend our environmental standards and community interests. Let us work together to ensure that development in Lanark Highlands reflects not just economic interests, but our shared responsibility to protect the land, water, and wildlife for generations to come. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you all tonight. My name is Doreen Donald, and I'm here representing Climate Network Lanark. I'm the Vice Chair of Climate Network Lanark, and I'm also the coordinator for Nature-Based Climate Solutions. I have several points to bring forward. Wetlands are among the most productive and biologically diverse habitats on this planet. They literally soak up climate change by storing 643 gigatons of carbon per hectare. They provide critical habitat, breeding grounds, and sources of food for fish, birds, amphibians, and animals. They create habitat corridors for wildlife. They control erosion, flooding, they moderate groundwater levels, base flow, they assimilate nutrients, and they protect our drinking water sources. Lanark County has one of the largest collections left in southern Ontario. It's our responsibility and privilege to protect them. As Dr. Paul Keddy, a Canadian ecologist that many of you may be familiar with, as he said, wetlands are some of the most effective of nature's climate control mechanisms. Lanark residents must be vigilant and preserve wetlands. Mining impacts on the environment are multifaceted and very far-reaching. They affect virtually all aspects of the natural world. From the moment the land is cleared for exploration to the final stages of processing and waste disposal, the environment bears the brunt of the industry. Mining removes all natural vegetation, topsoil, and subsoil to reach the aggregate. That results in soil degradation, erosion, increased sediments. We've talked about noise tonight. We've also talked about the impact that noise, dust, and pollution and contaminated water will have on adjacent ecosystems. And mining can expose previously buried minerals to both the air and water. Kavanaugh has indicated that the pit will be subject to progressive rehabilitation. This requires careful planning and monitoring. However, complete rehabilitation is often impossible, and it takes far longer to rehabilitate than to keep the land in its natural state. And many species will never return, and that results in a forever altered ecosystem. The international principles and standards for ecological restoration and recovery of mine sites states, and I quote, "The potential for ecological restoration should never be invoked as a justification for destroying or damaging existing native ecosystems," end quote. Lanark County has established a climate action plan. They did this in 2023 to reduce greenhouse gas emissions across the county. It's focused on 7 key principles, one of which is to advance the use of nature-based solutions in climate change management. And one of the priorities of this action plan identified for the current council term is to sequester carbon and protect natural resources. Wetlands store carbon. Wetlands are a natural resource. The county has also established a working group to develop a natural heritage system plan for the county. This type of plan is defined as an interconnected network of natural features and areas such as forests, lakes, rivers, and wetlands. These features help conserve biological diversity, they maintain ecological functions like flood control, and they're also places for recreation. On September 6th, a week or so ago, the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks for Ontario announced they are investing $9.6 million in wetlands. Todd McCarthy, the minister, said, quote, "Wetlands make communities more resilient. They act as natural infrastructure that protect drought and flooding. They clean our water and create a habitat for a variety of life." In summary, licensing a pit only 30 meters from the Barbers Lake wetlands is of great concern, especially when you consider the extraordinarily high value of our county's remaining wetlands. Furthermore, our own county council and the Ontario Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks are actively working to protect and conserve our wetlands. Amending your official plan to support this application does not protect and conserve our wetlands. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council. My name's, and Chair, my name's Mark Wheeler. I live and work on 1001 Highland Line. I'd like to talk about something, that a reoccurring theme here, incompatible land use. 15 years ago, about 15 years ago, Council approved a new pit application on the Highland Line directly across the road from the current application before Council. And at that time, Council recognized the incompatible land use. And there was several kind of mitigating impacts of those conditions that were agreed to by the community-minded proponent were site hours of operation that are included in the agreement with the township and the site plan of 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. There will be no operations on Saturdays, Sundays, or statutory holidays. Keep in mind, this is recognizing that incompatible land use, the gravel pit across the road from the current one that's being applied for, this is an application already recognized and used by council. I'll say it again, 6 to 6, Monday through Friday, no operations on Saturdays, Sundays, or statutory holidays. Another condition that was agreed upon, a mitigating condition, was on-site crushing and screening shall be limited to the time periods between May 15th and July 1st, and between October 15th and March 15th. So, kind of mitigating negative impacts for incompatible land use. The proponent knew these conditions in council. I've shared them before, so that's no use, no new news. Also, another condition was during the half-load season prescribed each year by Lanark County and Lanark Highlands, no haulage or truck traffic shall enter or exit the site. Haulage may only occur in the event of an emergency situation upon approval of the municipality. Now, this happened 15 years ago, and it was recognizing the negative, mitigating measures of incompatible land use. That was the fourth pit application approved and in presence on the Highland Line. This would be a fifth pit application, and some might argue from the evidence shared tonight that it might be the straw that broke the camel's back. So, something to be considered. The other thing that I'm deeply troubled about regards Barbers Lake, and not only Barbers Lake, but other lakes in our township. It seems from the reports that the waterfront community designations that council has in the official plan and zoning bylaw is kind of being pushed by the wayside. It talks about a 150-meter buffer in our official plan, and it was repeated again by the proponent that the buffer is, I believe, 30 meters. Where the Lanark Highlands official plan expressly says 150 meters is a waterfront community. So, my other concern is the adequacy of infrastructure. This is an official plan and zoning bylaw change that changes the zoning designation of an area. Say you're living in a city and you want to build a new subdivision, you've got to ensure that there's proper water, sewer, all this kind of stuff. You'll do testing on the current system and how it works. There was a traffic impact study and several back and forths of peer review and responses They talked about the number of vehicles and the frequency of vehicles, but it never really talked about the actual haul route and the adequacy of the haul route for any planned change. If you're going to increase traffic drastically on a road, you have to make sure that it's able to handle that traffic. When the new pit was approved 15 years ago, there was improvements made on the road, recognizing that fact and making it safer. At the time, it was tar and chip. We all know it's tar and chip. And township said, you know, it's the best we can do. We're on a budget. Tar and chip isn't really built for heavy truck traffic, but you know, it's the best we can do. The Castle Guard consultants' response to the traffic impact study said a couple of things that I found interesting. Municipal roadways are, quote, presumably constructed to withstand repeated heavy loads, and it's up to the municipality to determine the future maintenance upgrade requirements through geotechnical studies and determine the necessary improvements or accommodations the heavy vehicle traffic that is permitted to use the designated loop truck routes. I think my question then would be is, have these geotechnical studies been completed on the haul routes that are in discussion? And I know there's also talks of the sweep turning on to County Road 12 from the Highland line. Also, a great concern would be on the 9th concession into McDonald's Corners, just at the top of the hill here. If there will be a restriction on tractor trailers turning at just up from Mira. That's all I really have to say. I just there's a lot to decide, and the important thing is we have a lot of gravel on the Highland line. The last gravel pit sets a precedent, I believe, but that was to mitigate that gravel pit. Adding another larger gravel pit to the equation is a whole other ball of wax. So I think if we're talking about incompatible land use, there's no mitigating this. It's been mitigated with the 4th pit. Any other further gravel pits, I think there's no mitigation. It's incompatible land use. Thank you.
Council and Chair, my name is Dale Bolton. I'm one of Barbers Lake property residents. Basically, tonight I just want to talk about this. Cumulative impact. I'll get you here. Okay. Cumulative impacts of everything that's going on the Highland line. If we were to gain approval and go into operation, both Highland line would be the 5th one just over 4 kilometers. To date, the pit licenses granted on the stretch of road have all been for extraction above the water table. But Kavanaugh Construction's application is requesting permission to extract below the water table. In fact, in some places, they want to excavate more than 100 feet below the existing surface. The Kinnan pit, presently operated by Arnott Brothers, has also now applied for an amendment to their license to allow them to go below the water table as well. This would mean 2 pits, literally across the road from each other at the entrance to the Village Pancake House, would be excavated deep in the same water table. There's no way to predict with certainty what effect this will have on the water table, local ecosystem, homes, and businesses depend on. One of the things we've learned over the last 2 years, that each aggregate license application in Ontario is treated without consideration being given to other pits nearby. The fact that Kavanaugh's proposed pit would be number 5 in a short string to the lake of Lion Highland is ignored in the applications process. This seems to be an oversight. Common sense suggests that excavation impacts such as noise, dust, truck traffic, and changes to the water table will all increase as the concentration of aggregate operations increase in the neighborhood. Like the famous Auditor General's report, review of the Ontario aggregate industry published in December 2023, includes a section called Cumulative Impacts not taken into consideration in approvals, section 4.8.2. Like the author points out, citing multiple pits or quarries close together can have cumulative negative impacts on communities, local roads and ecosystems beyond the impacts of any one site alone. They also note the ministry has no guidelines or processes for staff to consider cumulative impacts when pits are close to each other. Recommendation 14 of the Auditor General's report states, we recommend the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry develop a framework to incorporate consideration of cumulative impacts on aggregate operations when making decisions on new or amended approvals. They suggested that such a change would use lower daily maximum tonnages, limit trucks, reduce extraction depths, increase dust control and noise mitigation measures to address the cumulative impacts imposed by new or expanding operations on the environment and neighbors in an already heavily burdened area. The Highland line is already a heavily burdened area as far as gravel pits are concerned, and unfortunately these recommendations are not yet provincial policy, so they cannot protect our neighborhood. As Council prepares to vote on these changes necessary to let the proposed new pit proceed, I ask you to please keep the Auditor General's findings in mind. The Highland line and those living and working near it do not need more truck traffic, noise, dust, or impact on the water table and the ecosystem. I've also got one question, which I guess won't be answered now, but we need an answer sometime for this. Like, after review of public documents available to the public, my question is basically for you, Mr. Chair. Can you affirm that you are acting without bias on this Highland line pit development issue? And have you received independent legal counsel on the matter to make such a determination? Thank you very much.
Good evening, Chairman and Council members. My name is Donna Rose Creighton, and I live on the Galbraith Road, which is between Middleville and Clayton. And my concern tonight is with the drilling below the water aquifer. I was taught from a very young age that you take care of water aquifers, and once you lose water, it's gone. So it may not affect just everybody in this area, it could affect a lot of people in the Highlands as well. So I seriously ask you to consider all of this information that everybody's presented tonight before you make your final decision. And I think it should be left. We have enough pits as it is, and make the people and their businesses proceed as they have been doing. Thank you.
Good evening, folks. I got it. My name's Joel Smith. I live on the Highland line, and thank you. Thanks for hosting tonight. The public consultation process is so important to how we make decisions that impact the whole. It's how the council ensures that the knowledge and the wisdom of the community is heard, and that we weigh the pros and the cons of the things considered. Because I think we are smarter together. None of us know all the answers. We've got some great consultants who are very wise in their field. We have great history. We've got great community members who care about what we're doing. Tonight we've heard, and for the past 2 years, we've heard a lot of cons. We've had concerns about environmental impact, community impact, economical impact, but we have not clearly heard what the benefit is. I've never heard somebody say, I called for a load of sand and they said they're out. We had a lot of sand. And this might be needed at some point in 100 years from now, or 150 years from now, for sure. But council, we respect you, we appreciate you, and you're here to represent the community's needs, and the community has spoken. This is the intent of the public consultation process. Thank you for hearing us. Please vote in line with the word of the group. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Jerry
Augusta. I'm the owner, excuse me, I'm the owner of 96 South Street in the village of Lanark. You're all familiar with it? The old Era building, which I want you to consider this evening as. How about that? What I want council to consider this evening and to take with them when considering the rezoning change is not only the valid concerns raised tonight by the local residents affected by this proposal, but the people like me in the village of Lanark who are directly affected by the truck transport. I want council to consider first the number of trucks, but not just the number, the type of truck. Single axle, double axle, triaxle with pump, the big 56 foot box trucks. They're huge, they're noisy. What I experienced, my wife and I and our tenant, at the crux of the 511, where all the trucks meet, is increased aerosol from all of the exhausts. And bear in mind that each of the trucks that go to that intersection have to stop. They stop, they idle, the truck goes through, car, etc. But that cumulative effect increases and will increase should council move forward with the approval of the rezoning. The other thing I want to point out is, and most people who live along our route won't necessarily note it, there's an awful lot of particulate matter associated with truck traffic. Now, particulate matter, rubber from the scrubbing of the tires, the exhaust fumes from predominantly diesel-fueled vehicles that are not properly tuned and maintained, these all form and fall to the ground somewhere. Again, on a major route, you probably wouldn't see it because of the wind dispersion. Come to the center of Lanark Village, you will see it. And I invite each and every council member here to come down and visit me. The windowsills on our building within 3 days go from white to black. This is something you people have to consider. Yes, it's a proposal out here, but it has long-term, far-reaching effects for the rest of the Highlands. Thank you.
So is that everybody?
Good evening. For holding consultation. It's how democracy works. I'm a business owner. I make something, I improve it.
You have to give your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Bob Whitmore. I live in Iron Mine Road here in this township. I'm a farmer, which makes me a businessman. I make something, I improve it, I sell it. So I understand what representatives and what Thomas Kavanaugh are trying to do. Before I moved here, and I looked specifically at Lanark Highlands as a potential place to move to, for many reasons. Before I moved here, I had to leave the previous farm that I had rented on while I learned the trade. And when I left, I took everything with me. All of my plastic, all of my metal. I even took some of the rock that I had extracted and piled up in an inconvenient spot for the next person. And I brought it here and put it to use again. Not only did I take what I had brought into that land with me when I left the land improved. My landlord at the previous farm later told me that when my
the fields that I had originally worked were cash crop. The person who was doing the cash crop said he had an improved yield on that plot alone compared to all the land around it. I have not seen a single pit in this township that has been remediated. Not one. A couple of speakers previously mentioned the remediation, how difficult it would be to remediate land. I don't see evidence of any orphan pits, I call them, excuse the PD. This happens in Alberta as well, with oil wells. And that is a much richer industry. They are easily capable of cleaning up their wells, but they don't. And I don't understand that. And I do not understand how Kavanaugh can tell us that they are going to clean up the pit when they have a track record, as far as I can tell, and please correct me if I'm wrong, of 0.
Yes.
So I would ask council respectfully, take into consideration what kind of business, what kind of people that you want investing in this township. You want someone who's gonna look to the future, to your children and grandchildren? Or are you just gonna take the quick, what is it, $200,000 a year that we get for road maintenance? I think that's something worth considering. Thank you very much.
Hello, excuse me, my name is Susan Hurley, and I live in Watson's Corners. I'm a retired planner, and I think that's relevant because the decision that you guys are going to have to make is a planning decision. I don't think most people understand the history of planning as a discipline or what it's supposed to achieve. As a discipline, it was kind of invented about 200 years ago, and to my mind, it had 2 branches. One was to make sure that safety was taken into account so that there are restrictions on how you can build a house so that it won't fall down. So a larger issue is to try to set up rules for living together so that conflicts are mitigated, and if they come up, there are grounds for making decisions in your situation. So we're in a situation in which a company has decided they want to do something, and you guys are going to have to make a decision about whether what they want to do is really productive for the township or harmful to the township. And I just want to point out to you, in our culture, in Western culture, those kinds of decisions are almost entirely decided on economic grounds. Even though, as everybody tonight has pointed out, there are health issues, there are environmental issues, there are peaceful enjoyment of life issues that are just not taken as seriously. They're not weighted as heavily as a short-term economic return is. And I think more people here, including you guys, should take seriously what Chief Davis said. We are not here for just now. We are here for the 7th generation. And if this kind of project is approved because you get consulting saying all kinds of technical proofs and improvements, if they don't work, and mostly they don't, there's no one you can sue and there's no way of getting the environment back. So I'm going to vote with Chief Davis, and I really hope you do too. Thank you.
Yes.
I really don't like having my back to my community, so I'm gonna turn sideways a little bit, try to do everybody at once, sorry.
You should be addressing council, ma'am.
Okay, I will address council, sir. From the very beginning of this, my name is Cindy Purville. I live right over there, it's road baseball from here. I moved here for the peace and quiet, for the lakes, the rivers, the winding roads, the safety for my son, the walks along these roads with my dog that I won't be able to do anymore. If this goes on, I'll have to go a different direction, break up my routine. My routine is already broken up because I should be having dinner with my son right now, and I've spent way too much time learning about aggregates and pits and proposals and bylaws We've all been disturbed by this, continually disturbed for 2 years. And I wonder, why wasn't this stopped from the very beginning? Isn't this the front line right here for things that are this ridiculous to being proposed? It's not just a little regular pit, this is a pit with all kinds of grave concerns that to me should have been halted the minute the idea was even brought forth to you. So all of us here have had to be involved in this for 2 years. I've gotten sick over this. I've got a very challenging life already. I have health issues with my son, health issues of my own, and more to come if this air gets even more polluted. The man that spoke about the truck traffic and the dirt on his windowsills in 3 days in the village, I have that too right here with the regular traffic that's going on. It's going to increase when these particulates start rising, and then now I'm hearing about radon and possibly radioactivity that I'm going to be breathing. I moved here believing that this was my last spot. Where can we go that we're not going to have a risk of something like this down the road? The trust is put into you who work for us. And we want to be able to trust you. But the fact that this proposal has gone even this far raises great concerns to me about that kind of process. That's what I wanted to bring up tonight. I have lost trust in my council, but not in my community. My community, from the very first meeting we had, it was very clear, we the people said no.
2.5 years ago, Cindy, 2.5.
It's a lot that we have been through that we could have been prevented. You should be preventing this kind of hardship on your citizens. Thank you.
So that appears to be everybody, so we'll have a wrap up and adjournment of the meeting, so I need to ask for a mover and a second to adjourn the meeting. That's Marina. And Ron, all in favor? It's carried.